Morning, folks. It's a lovely Saturday morning here. First week of spring in Australia, anyway. Sucks to be you, Americans, if you're watching this in September as it enters into autumn. So what we're doing today is I'm replacing all the brake lines. Now, I have done this on the front, and I've already done that for if you look in there, this little doodad here, the chassis to rear axle brake line. And the reason I'm doing this, and by the way, here's the replacement one. This is the rear left, which is the right one. The NH Pajero I had, which is now gone, sold to a mate. I think I had that roadworthy for about a week, pulled in the driveway, and just there was brake fluid pissing out the rear one, actually that one there on the axle. So I figured that, well, at the time I replaced it with braided lines. And given that my son and my wife are going to be driving this bad boy, I really didn't want them to have to be dealing with blown brake lines, just because these are, what would they be, 24 years old now? Yeah. Plus, I found that with the NH, when I installed braided brake lines, that car had the best brake feel of any car I've ever owned. And I even include the Legnum in that, with its bloody Brembos and whatnot. I don't know what it is. I just found that the brakes had a great initial bite, great progressive feel. The car stopped on a dime. It didn't lock the brakes easily. You know, all the things you want from a braking system. And that was from a 30-year-old, 3-ton car. I was super impressed. And having replaced the braided lines on the front of this one, it's still not as good as the old one. So I think it's two things. I think it's the braided lines, and I also think it's the pads. And if I recall, the pads I put on that car were these Bendix four-wheel drive specific ones, and the ones on this one are Bendix SUV four-wheel drive. So I need to go and dig up my records, because these are going to need to be replaced at some point. Let's have a look, see if we can see how good they are. Hard to tell. They actually don't look too bad. But let me just get this thing stuck back on the way it was stuck. Yeah, so I would like to get brakes as good as that, but basically we're here for safety. So for those of you who've never changed brake lines before, look, technically you should have what these call flare nut wrenches, and these let you get over a hard line to get over. Oh, great. Thanks, Light. Thanks for falling. Cheap ass magnet. They help you get over the braided line, the hard line. But however, on these rear calipers particularly, you're actually not getting over the braided line. Over the hard line. You're getting over the soft line. But regardless, the point I'm going to give you is the same. Do not start getting fancy until you have managed to get the nuts off. Because if you can't loosen those, the rest of the job is a waste of time. Or you'll find yourself having open the bleed nipple and let air in the system, and then you just can't get the nuts off. And so you've basically just fucked yourself then, and you find yourself having to go and buy tools that you didn't think you needed. So these ones, though, look like 17s. I don't have a 17 flare nut, so you can't get a ring spanner over it. What I did find that with the hard lines down in there, and I'm just going to zoom in again. Right, that hard line there, in the bottom, sort of in the middle of the screen now, I used my flare nut wrench, and even it wasn't good enough. So I actually resorted to using, and Derek from Vice Grip Garage would be happy, I used Vice Grips, because you can actually get a very, very tight grip on a bolt, and a lot of leverage depending on the length of them. So I'll try on that with an open-ended spanner and see how we go. Let's have a... yeah, fucking thing. Magnet, no good. Jeez. What am I? Oh, here we go. Let's have a look. Oh my god, that magnet is just shit. Actually, the magnet's not bad, it's the... Anyway. Oh, that's easy. Look at that. Easy as. That was barely even tight. Okay. So, zooming out again. I discovered the other one. The other one is a typical style. So let's see if we can get that off with the flare nut wrench. Let's see, 10mm flare nut. See if I can get it in. Okay, turn it around. All right, let's try with the vice grips. Now I might need, yeah, I might need to use 2 hands for this, sorry. I'll come back when it's mounted. Well, the bad news is I can't get in there with the vice grips. So I'm gonna try freeze and release, where it basically freezes the joint as opposed to heating it up. Now, I might just turn the light on for this, hold on. So I need my spanner handy. Gotta have it handy. I'm not gonna put my mouth on this, just jam it up here in the frame of the car. And then you gotta do this for like 5 to 10 seconds. And apparently it freezes. Should have used my let's have a look. No, it ain't moving and it's just starting to round off. Well, that sucks. Well, this is super annoying. The dust cover is basically spot welded to the back of the hub. So I can't get the dust cover off to give me better access to that fucking bolt. And so far, freezing and using the vice grips has not worked. So now I just got to be way more creative. As I said, remember, don't let any fluid out until you got those bolts loosened. I'm going to take a different approach here. What I'm going to do is remove the clip there, and I'm going to pull the clip off because, as you can see, there is hex on the back of that. So if I take it out this way a bit and put a spanner on that, I'll be able to hold it while I move this. So I'll probably get more leverage on it, because right now I can't really get the torque because the whole thing's twisting. I have to wait till it, and now that hits the frame. Let's see how we go. Right, well that got it. So I took it out, put the 17mm on there, and I actually held this against that, right? Because I basically have to push it that way while I leave this one that way, and that cracked it. Because if you think about it, I've got way more leverage on that 17mm than you do on the 10. So that got it. As you can see, I can get that, and I can get this. Oh well, that one actually needs my spanner on it. Wherever my spanner's gone. It's just a little bit tight still. So we're going to do this one first, because if this one doesn't spin the tube, then we'll do that one last. Now it's going to start leaking fluid, but that's okay. I've got my power bleeder ready to go, and I'll show you that in a minute as well. I really like my power bleeder. We can talk about the differences between power and vacuum bleeding. All right, let's get that out. Take that off. I might just put my finger in the hole. Try and limit the amount of fluid leak I get. Now I can pull that out of there. And now I can undo that one. So obviously when I reinstall it, I need to install that side first. Well, you know what I need to do? I was talking about making sure things come off. Make sure your nipple comes off too. Otherwise you can't bleed the calipers. Oops. I do have my 10mm here somewhere. Here it is. Oh, you know what? That's going to be an 8. There we be. That's annoying. Don't think I have a... Yeah, he's all right. He's okay. He's good. Oh, and I've got to remove the clips from this cable. What do I? Rear left. No, we're good. See, some of these cables come with these things still clipped to them, but they're shit. I don't like them. I just keep the stock ones. Alright, spray a bit of fluid everywhere. Gee, I better hope these are the right threads. They're definitely not 17, they're more like 14. Everything else fit though, so let's see. Looks good. So let's go get a 14. I'll take a punt here on 14, and I'm correct. Was worried for a second it might be 15, but it's not. Now I'm not using a huge amount of torque on this. See where my thumb is? It's really close to the... Oh, my fingers aren't all the way down the spanner. And I have small, weak hands. Now, this has to go in. Yep, that's perfect. So what you don't want to twist your cables up, right? You want to make sure they're in a nice angle. And by the way, if you think about it, because this is a solid axle, this whole assembly is solid, so this will never move, unlike the fronts, where they're steering back and forth, and that'll keep changing the angle of the hose. So if the hoses were kinked on the front, it'd be a lot worse. Not that your hoses should ever be kinked. Alright. Now that 10 mil is a bit cut up from using the spanner, the vice grips on it, but hopefully we'll never have to do it again. That's annoying. Yeah, that's actually a little bit messed up. It's not terrible, but it's not awesome either. And I've just thrown down my 10 mil spanner somewhere and I can't see it. Oh, here it is. Go with open end. Yeah. If I file that down a little bit, it'll be alright. But this is the problem. I mean, if you're a brake joint, you could cut it off and reflare it with a new nut, but I am not a brake joint. Alright. Now I can put the spring clip back on. And I'm just going to hammer that down from the top with the hammer. And then get the screwdriver so I can tap it down a little further. Right, we're good. That's one side done. Now, before I go and talk about that, because I'm not going to show you the other side. Why would I show you the same thing twice? I'll talk about power bleeding. So I have a Motive Products power bleeder. Big fan of this thing. I used to use vacuum bleeding, but the issue with vacuum bleeding I find, in fact, let me go back to the wheel and I'll bring my little drain bottle. The issue with vacuum bleeding is, obviously bear with me, I need to get the, nipple off this thing. Okay, so what you do is you obviously put your hose on there and you apply a vacuum to this. So what you do is you pull a vacuum through that bottle. There's a vacuum in the bottle with a little hand vacuum pump or an automated one or a Venturi based one from an air compressor, and then you loosen these, right? But the problem is that it actually sucks air through the threads. So it's sucking air into the threads and back out, and you're losing half of your vacuum just in the threads. And the only way to solve that is with basically what's called like a thread compound. I've got some somewhere in here, maybe. One of my drawers. If you've ever bought, there's these what they call speed bleeders, and they're nipples for the brake caliper. And what they do is they go on, they replace the existing nipples, and they're a one-way valve. So you loosen it, you can just bleed the system by pressing the brake pedal, but it won't suck air back in because it's a one-way valve. I like them on motorbikes. You know what? I'll probably move this to another drawer. Ah, well, it was a little grey bottle, and it was like a thread sealant. So you would put it on the, and the reason for that was for the speed bleeders, because they had the same issue in that whilst there was a one-way valve in the speed bleeder in this thing, I'm going to zoom in a bit for you. Ooh, it doesn't like the focus. Whilst there was a one-way valve in here, it would still need this compound on the threads, because as you pushed and let go, the one-way valve would seal, but it would suck air into the threads. So it was no good without that stuff on it. And it's the same with a vacuum bleeder. You're sucking air in. Now, it does actually suck through, but you lose a lot of the vacuum through. Oops. You lose, come on. It really loves my floor. See these marks on the floor, this graininess in the floor? It just wants to focus on that. So, yeah, you lose a lot of the pressure. And so you can also never see when there's no more air in the system, because there's always air. There's always air in this little hose, because there's always air coming through the threads. So that's a problem. So with the speed bleeder, what you do is you have this pressure coupling here, which you screw on. You know, there's like a little chain. The chain goes all the way underneath. I need to zoom out now. The chain goes underneath your master cylinder, making sure you don't put it over any of the hard lines and cause them to get squished by it. And then you tighten it way down. It's got a rubber seal under here, way down. Then what you do, I have zoomed back out. I've got this guy here. He actually needs more fluid in him, because otherwise he'll push air into the system. You can fill this guy to the top and keep him stored with a shitload of brake fluid in it. But here's your connector. This guy goes onto here, and then you pump this up with your hand. And what it does is it pressurizes the brake system. Now, if this is loose at all, what'll happen is it'll pressurize the system, fill it full of brake fluid, and piss brake fluid at the top. So you've got to make sure this is nice and tight. Otherwise, it won't even hold the 10 psi or whatever it is they recommend that you set it to. So yeah, so you pressurize the system, and it's got about 10 to 15 psi in it, which is quite a lot. And then what you do is you come round, and with your little guy here hanging from something. So this is going to be annoying one-handed, but I've got the thing connected up, and I have to unlock it, and then you pump it on a solid surface until the pressure builds. And you can see the pressure's already building, and you'll see that the fluid's going through the hose. Now, you won't get rid of all the air. There'll always be a bubble here, but what you'll find is that the fluid, unless you've pre-filled this, unless you've basically pumped, what you can do is you can start pumping while this thing's up in the air and get all the air out of this, but it doesn't really matter. The fluid will flow through. There'll be a bubble, but you'll see the fluid going along the bottom. So if the thing is not tight enough, you won't notice it until you hear it dripping on the floor. but you'll suddenly notice it pissing brake fluid everywhere. And then you've got to let the pressure out quickly. So let's get this to about 10 psi. I'm slowly going up and slowly inspecting my system here. I don't see any leaks. It looks quite dry. Okay, let's keep going. Doesn't take much to build the pressure because you're not actually pressurizing a huge amount of volume of air. Remember, the fluid's not compressible. That's why it's brake fluid. It doesn't compress. It's like a hydraulic line, right? Literally is. Okay, let's just check that again. Make sure she looks dry. I see no drips. I'll just go a little bit above 10 psi. We're good. All right. Now, literally, I can just come here and loosen this, and you'll see it start coming out. There it goes. And you just leave that until you think you've drained enough out. Right, bit of a couple of hours break there. My parents rocked up to say hello. So yeah, I've actually filled all that up now. There's no air in here. No, I've actually let this off and let it drain through, and I've tightened the nipple so that can come off. Yeah, so we're done. So these are tightened. They look really good. And I've actually also let the pressure out of the system here. Probably got about, I don't know. I might need to go get some more brake fluid. It's looking a little bit low. It may actually run out before I manage to flush out the next one, because I'm actually doing, not only am I doing here the, not only am I doing the actual getting rid of the air, but I'm actually flushing the brake fluid. It probably didn't need it, but you know, buy a second-hand car, flush the brakes. Yeah, so I won't repeat that video for you because it's just the same thing all over and over again, but can thoroughly recommend power bleeding.